Good evening and welcome to The Right Side, where we talk about today's news, trends, and issues from an admittedly conservative perspective. I'm your host, Chris Pareja, and this evening we're joined by Yaron Brook, president of the Ayn Rand Institute, and he'll be talking with us this evening about why the country is in the fiscal mess it's in and what he might do to resolve it if it were his country to run. Yaron, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me on.
So first of all, tell us a little bit about what the Institute has as objectives and how you got involved.
So the real objective of the Ayn Rand Institute is to promote Ayn Rand's ideas, to make Ayn Rand's ideas part of the culture. And you know, your viewers might be familiar with Ayn Rand from Atlas Shrugged and The Fountainhead. You know, these are books that were written over 55 years ago and are best-selling books today. They're selling hundreds of thousands of copies every year. So it's really to get the ideas in those books out into the hands of young people to read and to inspire them, and also to get it into the public debate, to take the issues that are presented in those books, the philosophy that Ayn Rand articulated, and bring it into the culture, into the cultural debate that's going on, into the political debate that's going on.
And so for those of our audience members who haven't read any of the books, like for example, Atlas Shrugged, I have read it, and it was life-changing for me, as we've discussed it was for you as well. Talk about maybe 2 or 3 of the top-level ideas that Ayn was trying to convey with these pieces of literature.
So really what she was trying to convey is the role of the individual, or the importance of the individual. So her whole ethical system, and she was a philosopher, she wasn't just a novelist, her whole essence of her morality is individualism. It's the idea that you need to take care of your own life. You need to pursue values that make your life the best life that it can be, that make your life a success, a prosperous, a flourishing life. And then what kind of political system the individuals who are going to pursue their life, who are going to use reason, are going to use rationality to pursue the best life available to them. The political system is a political system of freedom, a political system that leaves you alone to pursue your own values, a political system where the role of government is limited to the protection of individual rights. So it's the American system, the original American system, and it's capitalism. That's what capitalism means. Capitalism is a system of private property where the government does one thing and one thing only, and that is protect individual rights.
Right. And so in looking at that, if you compare it, you talk about the way that the political system was designed. It's not necessarily operating that way today. If you were to put it, her thought process into one of the major party kinds of alignments, where would you see it fitting for the political spectrum today?
You know, she was asked this while she was alive, and you know, she died in 1982, so throughout she saw the evolution of the modern Democratic and modern Republican Party, and she rejected both. I mean, she basically said, look, the problem is that the Democrats want to, you know, control the boardroom, they want to control business, they want to control the economy. Yeah, they're for some semblance of individual rights when it comes to free speech in the bedroom and issues like that. The Republicans, they want more freedom when it comes to the boardroom, when it comes to the economy, when it comes to business, but they want to, you know, they want to control free speech, they want to control the bedroom, they want to control my personal liberties. She was for personal liberty, she was for individual rights. She was for the idea that the government has no role in dictating our life and telling us what we can and cannot do, how we should and shouldn't behave, as long as we're not violating other people's rights. As long as you're not sticking your hand in my pocket. It's none of my business what you do in your boardroom or in your bedroom.
And so in the current political state, I mean, both of the major parties are tending to move toward more of a big government, more involvement, more power and control kind of scenario. Would you consider it more of a traditional libertarian type of a stance that she would have taken? Because many Republicans today are more libertarian, I mean, some of the old school ones, versus just all of the rhetorical.
So she would support what we've come to understand as kind of a libertarian position, but not exactly. Again, I mean, I think think of her more like the Founding Fathers. Think of her as a Jeffersonian in her political philosophy, much more than anything that we have available today. She was for government. She believed government has a role to play. Remember, some libertarians are kind of anarchist, but she clearly believed that government has a role to play, but again, only as the policeman, the judge, the soldier.
Right.
Not in any role in terms of dictating how we live our lives and what we do, not dictating our morality, not dictating how we run our businesses, not being a paternalistic government, but basically stepping aside and letting each individual pursue a happiness. You know, Declaration of Independence, the most important political document in human history.
Right.
We each have an inalienable right. Nobody can take it away. Not a majority. Nobody can take it away. Right? To what? To our lives, which means what? You have an inalienable right to life. Means you have a right to do what you believe is necessary for your life, for the success of your life, pursuit of your rational values. Nobody has a right to intervene. You have a right to liberty, to think what you want and to act on those thoughts without anybody stopping you. And you have a right to pursue happiness. And that's the core of a political philosophy. And, you know, there are times when the Democrats are worse, so you vote for a Republican, and there are times when the Republicans might be worse, and you vote for a Democrat. The point is that the key to look for is who is going to protect my rights, my individual rights. And you know, I think this administration, the Obama administration, is particularly bad. And I think in terms of violating our rights pretty much across the board. And I think that you know, most people who advocate for Ayn Rand's ideas, you know, would support Republicans over Democrats, but not because we love Republicans.
Right.
But because this administration and these Democrats are so almost nihilistic, or so, you know, anti the founding principles of this country, to an extent where the Republicans look good in comparison.
Right. Well, and that's the thing. A lot of people, the last election was evidence that people aren't showing up because they don't think it matters anymore. Neither option is that great, so you just kind of, maybe you participate, maybe you don't. And it's interesting that it sounds like she was very much an advocate of the constitutional limitations put upon government. But I saw a stat yesterday that the previous record for executive orders was 63. Obama's already written 700. So that's more example of people just bystepping.
The separation of powers is gone, and I think George Bush is the one who set a really bad precedent for this, and Obama's following up, and it's getting worse. Every president is worse, and this is the trend. And this is how we get to authoritarianism. That's the path that you take. And she was very much for separation of powers. But she believed that the Constitution, in many regards, you know, was the right document, was the right direction, but it was too weak. It should have been much more explicit about limiting government, much more explicit about what government shouldn't be allowed to do. You know, in hindsight, that's easy. Of course, the founders were geniuses, you know, the greatest political thinkers who ever founded a country, and this is the greatest country ever founded, but we're drifting so far away from their vision that in many regards, the Constitution today is irrelevant. I mean, nobody pays attention to it.
And that's
not Congress,
true.
not even the Supreme Court, right? They interpret it any way they want in order to get the laws that they want passed, and it's become an empty document. What we need is a movement to resurrect the true meaning of the Constitution and its true foundation. And I think you found that foundation in the Declaration, which sets the context for the Constitution by defining the principle of individual rights. Okay. Individual rights is the key political principle that makes America unique.
And so is that straying the reason that we're in the fiscal mess we're in, or what would you say is the cause?
Absolutely. Look, the mess we're in was not made by this president. It was not made by the previous president. This is a trend. This is something that's been building over the last 100 years. 1913 was the year in which we got a Federal Reserve, where the government basically monopolized money and monopolized interest rates. And guess what? You know, a dollar today was worth back then. I mean, the dollar's worthless, right? We've lost over 90% of the value of our currency since the Federal Reserve was established, right? So there's the one data point from 100 years ago exactly. Right. We got 1914, we got the income tax, right? Penalize work. Penalize production, penalize the most able and the most productive in society, you know, the progressive income tax system. And then, of course, we got the New Deal in the 1930s. And a lot of our problems today, you know, throw back Social Security, but welfare, the whole idea of government intervention, stimuluses, right? Who invented stimuluses? It was during that period. Did they work in the 30s? No. Did they work in the 70s? No. Did they work they never work.
It's just the wrong people were doing it. That's all.
The Japanese are going to try this again, right? For 20 years, they've been trying to stimulate the economy. They've had no results. The new government came in with an agenda we're going to stimulate big time this time, and it'll still fail because you cannot stimulate the economy from government. Government is not the stimulus. So that's the origins. And then you've got the Great Society, right? And that's where you get Medicare and Medicaid and where you get welfare and a lot of these programs that today are bankrupting the country. But it's not just that. If you look at our healthcare system, which is completely destroyed, every administration has passed laws that are being horrific. Democrat and Republican doesn't matter. Remember, George Bush passed Medicare Part D, which is one of the largest expansions of the redistributive state since the Great Society. So, every one of them. And what we've got today in America is we've got massive redistribution. Mm-hmm. We've got an entitlement state. We've got people who expect the government to take care of them. And that's 100 years of slow erosion to the American spirit of individualism and personal responsibility. And we've got a regulatory state. Again, we were talking before about Richard Nixon. Richard Nixon passed a lot of the regulations that today afflict business. But this is, again, a trend that started in the 1930s and has just accelerated. And to start a business today in America, to develop a business, to take a business public, to be successful is very difficult. Much more difficult than it was 20 years ago.
Yes.
Much more difficult than it was 50 years ago. We're making it very difficult for people to be successful in this country and to produce, to create, to build. And we demonize them. Mm-hmm. We demonize those people. So this goes kind of to Rand's moral point, right? We view them as being selfish and self-interested, as if that's a bad thing, that they're pursuing their own self-interest through profit. But profit is a good thing. Profit is a moral thing. You don't make a profit without offering somebody a value, right? And making your life better off, and at the same time making other people's lives better off. So we have a country that values giving money and taking money, but not creating it, not building it, right? And that's perverse, and that's a culture that is heading in the wrong direction. It's a culture that is self-destructive. And those are the origins, if you will, for where we are today.
So for people who weren't around, I mean, you talk about all of these programs that we all hear about so often now, and people think there's no way that the country can exist without them. But before they were enacted, people did survive. They worked in the communities, their families supported them.
But the fact is that under capitalism, very few people need support. Because capitalism produces more jobs than there are people available. I mean, think of the 19th century. 19th century American, and it's horrible how our history teachers have demonized the greatest century in American history, the century that took America from being a third-rate colony. We won the war of independence, let's be honest, because the British didn't care that much about us, because we weren't that important. And from there, we went to, by the break of World War I, to the greatest, mightiest, strongest military and industrial country in the world. Right? That 120, 40 years have been demonized by our history professors. And yet, this is the period in which we built this country. This is the period where we absorbed millions of immigrants, the largest immigration ever in human history. As a percentage of the population in America came in during that period. And it wasn't the intellects. It wasn't the well-educated. It was the poor of Europe. It was the oppressed of Europe. It was the uneducated of Europe who came here, right?
With a work ethic and a desire to succeed.
Exactly. And what did they have here? Did they get a safety net? No. Did they, what they had was a private safety net. They had charity. They had mutual aid societies. They had insurance companies. You could buy insurance against poverty. There was a private network that gave that safety net, but very few people needed it, because what did they do? They got a job. They got a job. They earned a living. They created wealth. They took care of their kids. They sent their kids to school. So within 2 generations, within 1 to 2 generations, they were middle class. They started with nothing, and they went to middle class without any government help. And that's the kind of system we need to return to. And when we got away from that system in the teens, but really in the 30s, that's when we start going downhill. And it's true. We've made a lot of progress since the 30s. I mean, standard of living had gone up dramatically. But that's in spite of government, not because of it. In spite of the government programs, in spite of government intervention. It's a testament to the spirit of entrepreneurship, the spirit of innovation, the spirit of freedom that Americans have, that they have succeeded in spite of all the shackles that government has placed upon them.
Right. And so you were talking, you used the word morality and capitalism being moral. Talk to me a little bit about that. And because many people in today's society, for various reasons, look at capitalism as evil. They say the free market system doesn't work. The reality is, in my estimation, we have no free market system. Talk to us about the moral argument.
Look, it's not only that capitalism is moral, it's the only moral system. So what is morality, in this kind of political context? A moral system is a system that leaves individuals to pursue their own well-being. Morality is about your ability to pursue your values, your rational values that lead to your personal happiness, that lead to your success as a human being. A system that allows you to pursue those values is a moral system. A system that obstructs you, that penalizes you, that constrains your ability to choose to pursue what you believe is rationally good for your life. That is an evil system. Statism, any form of statism, socialism, fascism, communism, the mixed economy we're in today are evil systems. They're evil systems because they restrict the ability of the individual to pursue happiness. They restrict the individual's ability to pursue his own life. They make the assumption, see, America was founded on a unique principle, and the principle that your life belongs to you. It doesn't belong to the state. It doesn't belong to the Pope. It doesn't belong to the king. It belongs to you.
It was revolutionary.
That was a revolutionary concept, the first country in human history to be founded on this principle. That's why I believe it's the only moral country to ever exist, because of this principle. And yet we've moved away from that, and statism is a movement away from that. Statism says, no, your life doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the majority. It belongs to whatever we vote. We get to decide what to do with your property. If your house, it turns out, is going to be more useful to us as a swimming pool, we'll just knock it down and build a swimming pool.
It's called eminent domain.
It's called Kelo, right? The Kelo decision said that's okay. And if we give it a Walmart, that's okay, as long as it's in the public interest. The public interest is one of the most, as used by a politician, one of the most evil ideas ever, because it basically says your life does not belong to you. It belongs to the public.
Right.
And if we decide to confiscate your stuff, to take away your stuff, if we decide that you're making too much money, we'll tax it. If we decide that you're making too little money, we'll put in a minimum wage law and make you unemployed. And let's be honest, minimum wage laws cause unemployment. That's all they do. They don't improve anybody's life. So the government then is coming in and telling you how you should live your life, how you should run your business, what you should do in your bedroom. So in that sense, the government we have today is immoral, and all forms of statism, all forms of government intervention are immoral. Capitalism is the only system that leaves individuals alone to pursue their happiness, to pursue their rational values. And as such, it's the only moral system.
So your passion is obvious, yes. and appreciated. Talk to me about what you would do to change things, given where we are today. How do we get back to that individualism, that the value of the person and their life as the rung of society?
So there are no shortcuts. There's no magic bullet. There's no one thing that if government just did, because it's not government, it's us. We get the politicians we deserve, as ugly as that sounds. It's true. We vote for them. And we don't run. I mean, I know you ran, but generally, we don't run. So we get who we deserve. We have to change as a culture, as a nation, we have to change. And there's only one way to do this. This is education, education, education. It's all about long-term education. There's no gimmick here. We've got to teach this stuff. We've got to talk about this stuff. We've got to write about this stuff. We've got to get the word out there. We've got to write books and articles and give speeches and do television shows. We've got to engage people with these ideas. And when we don't do that, we've given up. That's when the other side wins. Because look, they control the schools. Public education is theirs, right? It's government education. I hate public education. Government education,
yes,
right? They control the universities. 90-something% of all professors in universities are left of, self-identify as left of center. All we have is freedom of speech. We have the ability to speak and speak and speak. So it's incumbent on us to talk, talk, talk. Now, I think one of the most powerful tools to convey these ideas, to get people thinking, to get people swayed in a different direction, are Ayn Rand's novels. Right? So get your 9th grader to read Anthem. Get your 10th grader to read We the Living and Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged, for a 12th grader and a college student. Because no other novels, and these are novels, they're stories. They get you, they suck you in as a story, and then they bring in the ideas, right? get them reading these books, because these are powerful, important books. I have a new book out. It's called The Free Market Revolution. It's about what capitalism is and what it demands, and how we get back to it. What are the things we need to do as a country, just from a political, financial, economic things to do.
Give us the top 3 or 4.
Well, I mean, you gotta, in my view, you've got to advocate for the elimination of entitlements.
Okay.
Not saving them like Romney wanted to do, but phasing them out. Now, if you're 65, you'll get what was promised, or at least something of what was promised. But if you're 55, you should get a lot less. And if you're 20, you should be told today that you're not getting anything. So that in 2 generations, there's no Social Security, there's no Medicaid, because we don't need them. People should buy insurance. People should, what a concept. People should save. How about that?
You're talking crazy now,
yes.
Yaron.
We need to completely restructure our tax system, eliminate all deductions, all exclusions, and way lower the rates. So
you're looking at a flat tax or a fair tax?
A flat tax. If you had to have a progressive tax, fine, but make it, make it very low and make it simple. Now, I would like to see a flat tax. I would like to see rich people paying less taxes, because their capital is more valuable out there in the marketplace than anybody else's capital. But, a consumption tax, but only if you did away with the income tax, right?
Not
you don't
in
want
addition.
Both. You don't want both.
I'm going to, yeah.
So yes. So you gotta simplify that. You got to get rid of, and this is what Republicans should be running on, right? Here's a simple one that all Republicans should be running on. They would win votes, and then they would have to execute, and that's the problem. This is the first thing they should do. Get rid of all business subsidies. All of them. To your friends, to your enemies, all of them. Get rid of all farm subsidies, all business subsidies. Get rid of all deductions for R&D and capital expense. Anything. Corporations should pay a flat, actually, let's be honest. Corporate tax rate should be 0, because who pays corporate taxes?
Well,
the consumer
does, yeah.
Only the consumer does. So why have this hidden tax on everything we buy? Corporate taxes should be 0, and all subsidies should be gone. And then, finally, the most important one, if we had a fight on one, privatize all education. Get rid of public education. Get the innovation, the competition, the brain power that here is in Silicon Valley. Get those people thinking about how to make education as good a product as an iPhone is. And bringing the profit motive into education, so that they have so we create that competition. Get rid of the public schools. The public schools are enemy number 1. They're the ones who are destroying this young generation, and it is a crime.
And removing the ability for critical thought.
Exactly.
But we've got just a few seconds left. Can you go ahead and tell people how they can learn more about the Institute and how to find you?
So I've got a blog. It's called capitalism.aynrand.org, and Ayn Rand is AYNRAND.org. The book, Free Market Revolution, available on Amazon or pretty much anywhere else. And aynrand.org, more broadly, is the Institute's website, and there's tons of content and material. And, of course, go buy Atlas Shrugged and read it.
Thanks for joining us this evening, Yaron.
My pleasure.
And if you'll hold on for just a minute, we'll be right back with you. And on that note, we will take a quick break for a word from our underwriter, the Conservative Forum.
Say, well, I say I'm a constitutional law attorney. And they say, oh, really? What kind of constitutional law attorney? I say, well, I'm the true kind. The kind that believe that the Constitution is what the Constitution says and what it was intended to say. Anything beyond that is tyranny and should not be allowed. So
So let's come to this, my friends. You ready for the second American Revolution against a ruling class that simply lectures but does not listen or defend the American people? It is government versus the people. Am I right? Yeah. Look at the Electoral College example. Right? A leftist popular challenge to states' rights. You think the founders weren't brilliant people? Did they not know what they were doing by carefully calibrating to get the small states and the big states to come together? Why does Wyoming get 2 senators in California? Actually, I'd rather have Wyoming's 2 senators.
And welcome back to The Right Side. That was a word from our underwriter, the Conservative Forum. They regularly meet on the second Tuesday of each, actually the first Tuesday of each month at 432 Stearland Road here in Mountain View. And they're known for the speakers that they bring to the table for conservatives from around the Bay Area. This evening, Yaron Brook will be speaking. As you know, he was our guest this evening and is going to be great this evening with the content that he's going to provide, more ideas that he'll expand upon there. In February, we'll be joined by Kevin Jackson. In March, there will be a forum on education, and yes, even members of unions are invited to go ahead and talk about education reform that might be needed to create the best possible product for the youth in the Bay Area. In April, we will be joined by Dr. David Bobb, and then in May, Bill Whittle. You can come to the Conservative Forum again at 432 Stearland Road at the IFES Portuguese Hall, and if you'd like more details, you can find them at theconservativeforum.com. In closing, as Yaron mentioned this evening, there was a different way that the country was founded. There are ideas that still exist that could save the country and bring us back to that level of individualism that really made the United States great. And I have the faith it can be made great again if we get back to the basics of understanding the value of the individual, of valuing hard work, of reducing the safety nets as opposed to entitlement programs to actual safety nets as opposed to lifestyle choices, and if possible, removing them altogether and getting back on a strong fiscal footing. But you can learn more with the details at the Ayn Rand Institute, and we hope that we can bring more of these types of ideas to you in the near future. On that note, we'd like to thank you again for joining us on The Right Side. I'm your host, Chris Pareja, and we'll look forward to seeing you again sometime soon, either in person or on the show. Have a great night.